We run multi-sport programs after school for kindergarten to year 2 students, which is again a really large gap. We tend to find that, in year 3, 4, 5 and 6, students are starting to pick the sports that they love to participate in. We do deliver sport-specific sessions in addition to those, multi-sport programs after school. But we tend to find our multi-sport program, which really does focus on, exposing kids to as many opportunities as possible within that 8-week program that we deliver each term, is one that's most popular. So that's a co-curricular where we sit. To the right of that again, there's our involvement over the weekends. We run birthday parties, and they're really broad. We've done water-based play parties. We've done Nerf gun wars, which are always exceptionally popular. We do multi-sport birthday parties. They obviously sit over the course of the weekend. To the left of that Cubs program, and this is the space that's really grown organically for us and really quite quickly, is our involvement in the community.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Drive Phase podcast. This is your show about sports founders, leaders and experts and the stories behind their business journeys. I'm really lucky to have with me today Mitchell Harvie of MBA Sports Coaching, all the way from Perth, Western Australia. Great episode, again, good chat we had going through all of the kind of trials and tribulations of building a business, especially one that's growing so quickly. We started off by discussing Mitch's journey through becoming a primary educator and then into leadership in primary education. Look at the differences between the kind of Australian system and the UK system, and then talk about how Mitch went on to complete his MBA, specialising in people and culture, and he is now the general manager at MBA Sports Coaching. And they're really kind of trying to hold on to the rocket ship, working with founder Mark Bailey over there as they kind of spread out and expand all across Western Australia and Australia as a whole. And one of the good things we had a good chat about was the challenges of that rapid growth and how they're maintaining the values, quality in their team. And we have a deep dive into the kind of unique philosophy around working in early years and starting with the physical literacy side of things and really building that foundation. So yeah, great conversation to hear right from a company kind of on the cusp of rapid expansion, and anyone who's growing a business at the moment or looking to grow a business, great listen, and yeah, hope you enjoy the show. Okay, so I'm really excited to welcome Mitchell Harvie to the show today. He's the general manager at MBA Sports Coaching, and they are really leading the way in physical activity delivery for children from 2 years to 12 years old in Australia. He's joining me from Perth, and we've navigated the time difference, and it's really great to have him with us today. So Mitchell, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's a real honour. It's something that we've had in our visions as a company right back when we first began our relationship with Coordinate many years ago, and for a country that has a time difference and a time gap that we do, it's a real pleasure. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, great stuff. I mean, how we normally start out is getting to know you a little bit more, and I'm sure we're going to have a good chat about the kind of origins of the company. But for you, I guess, and it's going to be good for our listeners as well to kind of hear a different perspective. So can hear from your accent. Born and raised in Australia, was it Perth you originate from?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, no, I born and raised in WA, which, as I alluded to a little bit earlier on, it is the most isolated city in the world, and lots of people have no idea where it is. But I still think we're very fortunate to be where we are. We've got obviously some of the most consistent weather, and born and bred, and I've been here all my life. So not to say that the rest of Australia isn't gorgeous, but I am a bit biased, and I will say that the WA coast is the best.
So if we're going to talk about sports and I guess your first influence of sport, or maybe your most impactful one, and we were mentioning it earlier on that kind of we look from the UK, look in kind of envy, like you said, perfect weather all the time and outside playing active lifestyle. But from a childhood perspective and coming up through school, what was that like? What was your experience there?
Yeah, so I grew up south of the Perth Metro in a place called Dunsborough in the southwest, which is traditionally a little bit wetter than what, say, the Perth region is, which is traditionally quite dry. Certainly not wet by UK standards, but certainly more rainfall annually than the Perth Metro. Look, I was exceptionally blessed, and I have my parents to thank for the opportunities that I had, not just within that region of Perth. At the time, my experience, I suppose, began with with soccer, which is your football, and then into AFL, so Australian Football League, as a young kid. And I've got fond memories of spending time even throwing a beanbag around with Dad in the lounge room and just doing throw and catch from a young age. So I was really fortunate from a young age that my parents were really involved and encouraged me to get involved, and I had the opportunities, moving right through to pretty much experience almost every sport there is under the sun. So at the age of 9, my parents made I suppose probably what was a difficult decision at the time, to move back up into Perth, which was, as I said, 500 k's north back into the metro region. And that was really in preparation for high school. And from there, I had the opportunity to really experience, as I mentioned earlier, every sport there is to offer. So, I tried my hand at hockey and spent some considerable time through athletics programs, which really set the foundations for a lot of the sports that I tried. I don't know, I was pretty fortunate in terms of being relatively successful in a lot of the ones that I did. For me, it probably became that age, which is pretty consistent really for those 13, 14-year-olds that start to narrow down what their interests are. And that for me was Australian football, and that became my life. I absolutely breathed it. Morning, afternoon, evening, and if I wasn't seen with a footy in hand, I was obviously probably at training. So, moving through to high school, I was extremely, again, lucky with the opportunities that were provided. I was involved at every opportunity that was there. So whether that be swimming, through the track and field, and into beach volleyball, I really tried my hand at most things, and I for sure absolutely put down where I am now as a direct result of my involvement with the people that I've met along that journey. I've been really thankful for the friends that you make along the way, and the trials and tribulations that you face with any form of sport, regardless of what level. There's lots of life lessons along the way that you learn and hold with you that stay true today.
Definitely. And I touched on kind of secondary school angle. What's primary school PE look like in terms of provision? So obviously we're going to talk about the impact that you're making with MBA, but maybe distance travel back then as you were growing up, was it similar to the UK? Primary school teachers teach all subjects. Did you have specialists coming into school, or was there a specialist in each school? What's the setup out there?
Yeah, great question. So look, that landscape has changed in probably recent times. But when I say it's changed, it's obviously my understanding of that's changed from being a kid to where I am now. But as a kid, no, we had primary PE specialists. So each curriculum area within primary schools, generally as a whole, has an area of specialisation. So you'll have generally an art teacher, a phys ed teacher, generally a languages teacher, and often at times there might be a science teacher in there as well. So through my primary school experience, I was really fortunate to have what was a phys ed specialist, and he, I can remember my involvement right back, through my time in the southwest and back up into the metro. Obviously, that was my absolutely favourite subject, and the phys ed teacher was the epitome of who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And the irony behind that was, that's what obviously where my path led post school. But we're really fortunate here in WA and in Australia, for that matter, that it does have an element of importance. And I think what's great to see is in the last 5 to 10 years, that's probably become even more of a core focus in the Australian curriculum. So it's been a space, the WA health and physical education specialist area, that maybe hasn't quite been as consistent as what you'd see in high schools with areas of specialist teachers. But that's certainly changing, and a lot of the universities are coming on board now and delivering basically, primary trained phys ed degrees, with the intention that they're sending out primary trained phys ed teachers, really focusing on the fundamentals to hold people in the right place moving through to the secondary schools.
Awesome. And I guess I want to talk about the kind of origins of the company, but I think first it'd be good to talk about your kind of journey to where you are now, and kind of driving things with joining the team and the leadership team there. So I guess coming out of school, Aussie rules as we call it. I don't know, you'd say footy, right, over there? Is that correct?
Yeah,
that's a big focus of perhaps your passion, right?
Yeah, correct. Yes.
And then, academically, was there a choice, or was that ever Was that the focus at that point? I've got to be working in sport, and I kind of build my path from there, or was there another journey that took a turn?
Yeah, well, I think if we opened up a yearbook from a year six graduation or a year 12, I think you'd probably find a comment in there about wanting to play that at a professional level, and I think that's a dream of a lot of young kids to do whatever they love doing at a professional level. I think my decision post school was probably very much heavily influenced again from and I think it often is from your family. Both my parents were educators, were teachers, both in primary school settings. My grandfather had a very long history within education as a principal himself. For me, it was, I think often when you get to the end of, your secondary schooling, you think to yourself, what is it that I want to do? And most people can't even answer that question now as adults. So it was the obvious answer. It was a matter of doing what I knew, but also taking what I loved. And that led me to on to what was a health and physical education degree, studying primary, particularly at Notre Dame University, which is a private Catholic university here in WA. So, yeah, I think it was a combination of what I knew and what was maybe somewhat safe. Did I necessarily want to do that for the rest of my life? As a question I couldn't answer probably at year 12. I think it's just a matter of finishing school sometimes and going on a journey, but exceptionally grateful for, again, the opportunity that I had, going through Notre Dame and the people that you meet and the the time that I spent in that space has been really the foundations to me as a person. So, very grateful.
Yeah, and so you've gone through the kind of the academia, and you start your role in phys ed. Was as a specialist teacher in primary school phys ed? And I guess my questions around that would be, sure, you loved the role, but what was it that drove you to maybe look at a different path, but the same sector, if you know what I mean? So like you're on the commercial side now, and then maybe was it just a drive to think maybe I can make a bigger impact being part of an organisation, or kind of what was that thought process?
Yeah, no, great question. Look, for me, there's I suppose been a bit of a journey really. So yes, from there I moved across and worked within a small government primary school, which became quite large in numbers in the end. From there, I progressed into the private Anglican system and found myself again within a primary teaching space, again overseeing a phys ed program. What I loved always about that is the impact that you can have across a whole school rather than just maybe a particular class. And what I also loved about that primary space is you have the ability to really impact a community. You become the face because you are the person that's often been the one that's running large events, whether that be at an inter-school level, or whether that be, even within a school space. So that then for me became an opportunity to lead what was then a K-12 department. So I ended up finding myself in the secondary space, which was the space I never thought I would find myself in, but it was a really good opportunity to, I suppose, build my leadership skills and work with staff that were within the same area, but somewhat out of my specialisation. When COVID hit in 2020, I can remember coming home and, in all honesty, Perth were probably one of the most untouched places, but we were still impacted as everywhere was around the world. We were
I was going to say that's probably beneficial to be isolated at that point, right? It's an isolated city.
We were very lucky to be the most isolated city at that point, that's for sure. But I remember making a decision and coming home and thinking to myself, where and how do I, I suppose, A, grow professionally, but B, make a larger impact. And I knew at that point for me, it was about needing to go and extend my leadership skills. And so I made the decision to go and study a postgraduate in Masters in Business Administration. And the intention behind that was I wasn't overly sure whether or not my progression was going to be in the education space for the next 30 or 40 years as within the administration. And my decision to move away from an education leadership postgraduate degree and rather into a Master of Business Administration was to really open the doors. So what I suppose has now played out has really been a really fitting switch for me in terms of career changes, because it's been a matter of what I've done and what I've, I suppose, specialised in, combining with a new set of skills and working within a similar space, but having a really greater reach. So I've got a really good understanding of, the education system from a department level. I've got an understanding from the private system level, and I've now brought in this, skill set that acquired through the postgraduate in terms of actually managing a business. Separately to that, I suppose it sat within all of that journey was I sit on a variety of committees, one of those being the Australian Council of Health and Phys Ed's state board, and that's really the governing body of health and phys ed teachers. And so I had a larger impact level about a bigger picture, and that I suppose probably also had a part to play with me making a decision about how do I extend it and have a greater reach, and that's really led to me to where I am today.
I'm kind of hearing your journey and experience stuff. I'm thinking like perfect fit for the role you're in at the moment, and I'm really curious about how that came about. So was it a case of Mark was hunting you down, having noticed you and thought, yeah, this would be a great fit, or what was it? Did you see an advertisement? How did you get involved with MBA? And then maybe once we've gone through that, we'll maybe talk about that origin story from Mark's perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. A bit of a journey, really. When I think right back to the very beginning, it was really by chance. I think Mark might have said that absolutely there might have been an element of him keeping tabs, over the journey about my involvement within that space across the state. But he had come out to the school that I was working at the time, and we met one-on-one, and I think we both realised that my knowledge and drive probably aligned to what it was that he was wanting to achieve. And so that led from that meeting to a one-on-one meeting at a local bar that had opened up down the road, and we spent an evening one night, and I think we both left with our minds blown, at the potential that was there, and my contacts within the industry, and the vision that he had alongside not only my contacts but also the vision that I could absolutely share and drive with him to achieve was where that began. And that really became a conversation over the course of probably 6 to 10 months, and at that point we hadn't sort of discussed at any time me moving across. It was maybe something we'd talked about. I think Mark was sounding the waters, and I probably was as well, moving from what was a really stable industry, education, and not knowing quite where MBA was at. But that progressed, and in the end it was a matter of having a conversation about, hey, we can really start to move and shake over here, and what are your thoughts? And since then that's exactly what we've done. We're starting to really move and shake, and it's one of those things you look back on, sliding doors moment. It hasn't been a tremendously long time, but really grateful that I took the leap, and I'm sure that Mark would say the same thing, because we're in a very different space, 6, 7, 8 months down the line, and we definitely made the right call.
For the listeners who don't know the company, it'd be a good chance to maybe give a bit of an overview, because I know we kind of give a little intro at the start there, but I know you're doing a lot of innovative things, a lot of programs, especially the wheels and stuff like that. I love that, and kind of where you are now, and maybe we can have a chat about kind of the business model and future. But yeah, in terms of what MBA offers, like that core offering, how would you explain?
Yeah, a really broad umbrella would be the best way to explain that, and it's not the best way to answer. But for me, what sits central to that umbrella is what we call CUBS, which is an acronym for Kids Understanding Basic Skills. Going back to the question you had to me in relation to what does a primary phys ed specialist look like in a primary school, you'll tend to find they are delivering year 1 to year 6. And what's really interesting, no matter what conversation you have at what level, if I asked the person walking down the street, what year group is the most important year group, not just for phys ed, but for science, for English, 99% of people will say kindergarten and pre-primary, which
I thought I was getting nervous. I thought you wanted to answer. I was going to say the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So kindergarten and pre-primary students, and interestingly, we spend, particularly here in Australia, a lot of money on the other end. That year 12, assessment type, what we call ATAR program, and yet at the end of the day, the foundational levels are really important. Now, going back to what I was just stating, the kindergarten and pre-primary students are the ones that tend to be the ones that are missed or forgotten within primary PE programs. And that's generally a funding thing, but also a time allocation thing. So for us, we sit in that space. We've decided strategically to employ what we call CUBS teachers. So again, going back to that acronym, that's a take on fundamental movement skills. So CUBS stands for Kids Understanding Basic Skills. And the acronym CUBS, our little mascot for that is Leo the Lion. So Leo is our mascot as a company, hence the CUBS. And what we do there is with our primary PE trained specialist teachers, we plan to WA curriculum. We deliver that as primary PE specialists to kindergartens and pre-primary students. And then we provide assessment that aligns to the WA curriculum. So we're sitting in a space that no one from a specialist space year 1 to 6 is doing. And we're really filling a need in the market. So for me, that's really central. I think that really drives our real difference in the market, is delivering these really value-based programs that are the fundamentals to every single sport, moving through the years. So,
sorry to jump in. I just wanted, just on that one specifically, I know this may be the difference between the different countries, but at that point, yeah, you're right. Kind of early adoption, early focus on physical literacy. Obviously, it's going to mean kids are going to have the skills to be engaging in sport and enjoying it and moving through into adolescence, etc. Is there like a specific funding around that? What's the kind of model there in terms of just from a business perspective? Is there funding for that, or is that a difficult sell into schools? Is it a hard?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think often you find school budgets are often tight, and depending on what setting that you're in, whether that be the department or, even into the private system, there's always an element of money being tied up in different avenues. What's often tricky is trying to sell the value of that. Now, there are some wonderful schools and teachers and administrators that understand the importance of that. There are obviously others on the other end, and that they have their mind in something else. And that often might come down to passions and beliefs as well. But speaking about funding models, that Cubs program can be funded by the school directly. It can also be funded by parent contributions. So, our kids are fortunate here in Australia that government schools, they don't pay to attend, but they do have the opportunity to pay what they call parent contributions and charges. And so a school can list within that parents and contributions and charges the programs they intend to run and the cost of what that would be and the impact that would have. So there is an element of parents and contributions that can cover that cost. And then we're also very lucky, which, I believe is a similar model like that in the UK, but we've got a national funding model, which is called Sporting Schools Australia. And that funding model can be utilised for nationally endorsed sport providers. And the idea behind that is about increasing participation levels, at every level, particularly in a co-curricular space. But as a company, we're now endorsed as a sporting school provider, and one of those opportunities again is for schools to utilise that funding to be able to bring us in, and our specialists in that space to really deliver a program that they wouldn't normally receive.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I appreciate you going a bit more detail on that one, because I know listeners will be interested.
Pleasure. So that's really central to what we do. Just going back to that umbrella, it's quite broad. To the right of that, we have our co-curricular offerings. So they're things that you'd see before and after school, whether that be a before school run club and we get 100 kids there, for a 45-minute session in preparation for what might be a cross-country carnival. We run multi-sport programs after school for kindergarten to year 2 students, which is, again, a really large gap. We tend to find that, in year 3, 4, 5 and 6, students are starting to pick the sports that they love to participate in. We do deliver sport-specific sessions in addition to those, multi-sport programs after school. But we tend to find our multi-sport program, which really does focus on, exposing kids to as many opportunities as possible within that 8-week program that we deliver each term, is one that's most popular. So that's a, co-curricular where we sit. To the right of that, again, there's our involvement over the weekends. We run birthday parties, and they're really broad. We've done water-based play parties. We've done Nerf gun wars, which are always exceptionally popular. We do, multi-sport birthday parties. They obviously sit over the course of the weekend. To the left of that Cubs program, and this is the space that's really grown organically for us and really quite quickly, is our involvement in the community. And I put that down quite honestly to the switch in mindset from probably what was the Australian public and maybe even internationally, quite honestly, about the importance of not just physically moving, but also socially engaging. And I think COVID was the catalyst to that. I really do. And for us, that's involvement in the community has grown exponentially, and we're finding ourselves involved with really large scale events where people are reaching out and saying to us, Mitch, we've got, a very large swimming event down in Busselton, and that swimming event has 7,000 competitors, but some people are facing barriers of being involved in that event because they don't know what to do with the kids. Is there anything you could do with the kids to get them physically moving and actively engaged and socially involved at the same time that we're running our event to actually allow more people to participate? And so we found ourselves, partnering with some really major groups. For us, one that I'm really proud of in recent times is the Telethon Kids Institute. It's one of the largest fundraising groups for children's health, particularly here in Australia. And I think they might still hold the record for the amount of money that they produce and raise, in that space for children's health and children's hospitals, I think potentially across the world. And that's another space that we're starting to find ourselves involved with. Again, providing opportunities for kids that, either face challenges. And that's just another example of one that we are finding ourselves involved in terms of breaking down barriers. So really large scale community events is one that we're seeing a real growth in, whether that be, I gave you an example of the Busselton and Jetty Swim. There's a beautiful island off our coast called Rottnest Island. And, we've done some New Year's events there where mum and dad got to enjoy the fireworks and a beer whilst the kids played beach soccer and beach volleyball, out in the sand in front of them, which speaks back to the weather that the gorgeous Perth that obviously has. So that's, it's community space. It's one that's growing. We've done some things over recent times with the Fathering Project, trying to encourage dads to be with their kids. And a lot of that has been around, again, involving them in things like capture the flag competitions, dodgeball tournaments, Nerf gun wars. So that's, a space, like I said, that's growing really exponentially. And then just lastly, the last little piece to that umbrella and a program that we're really excited to launch in what will be just under a month now is what we're calling Goldies. So Goldies is golden oldies. The feedback we often get, naturally for us, our customers, you would think of the kids, but realistically they are their parents. They're the ones that obviously need to be made aware of the importance of what it is that we're doing. But the feedback we often get is we'll have grandparents come down and go, do you know what? Nothing like this exists for our age bracket. And they're right. If I think about that age bracket of 50, 55 plus, your mind goes to water aerobics, golf, lawn bowls. And so we started to get creative and think, well, why can't we modify programs and make things like walking netball and walking soccer, seated tennis. So that's a space that we're really excited to launch in coming weeks. And I have no doubt that, again, it's a space that really hasn't been touched in terms of modifications to that bracket. And I know that's one that's going to show enormous growth for us.
Yeah, definitely. It's just another. I mean, from a business point of view, it's a demographic that's just continuing to grow, right? So if you get it right, you kind of you can be sure that's gonna fly. I'm interested in your recruitment strategy because I know that's a challenge for everyone. And when you're explaining it there, it's like really exciting for someone. So much diversity in their delivery and something new all the time and all these events and all that. Do you struggle to find staff, or is it just in the UK and I don't know if it's anywhere else, but there's a real focus on unfulfilled vacancies and people struggling to hire? How are you finding things and kind of what's the strategy there?
Yeah, great question. I think that's part of going back to what I said earlier in the pod was, I think sometimes the quicker you grow, the quicker you fail, and it's a really true motto that rings true in my head all the time. We're in a position now where the opportunities present themselves at a rapid length. And I did a recent presentation where I described us as a greenhouse, and this greenhouse started quite small, and we're trying to nurture the crops that we have within that greenhouse. And that greenhouse will become a bigger greenhouse, and we'll nurture those crops. We need to deflect the things that are potentially trying to invade, what is this really, superior group of crops that we have. And eventually, we'll be able to remove that greenhouse, and we'll have these really large fields that, are producing the fruits. And I think that's really, a great image that really is reflective of where we're at. What is absolutely key to any of that growth is, as you mentioned, very much about finding the right staff. And I spoke to you earlier about that in regards to franchisees, is making sure you find the right people. I think as we've grown, we've found it naturally easier to find staff, which I think happens. We're fortunate that we've got some large corporate partnerships with some really big brands like New Balance, Hydro Flask. It's a WA product called Sunbum. And I think that in itself has probably placed us on a scale where people want to work for us because of the involvement that we have with some of these larger organisations. But further to that, what's really interesting, I think this is reflective of the education landscape at the moment, and this is international really, is the amount of work in which teachers are finding themselves is disallowing them, should I say, to actually do what it is that they love. And so we're now finding it easier to find these really qualified, years of experience educators that are thinking, do you know what, I love teaching kids. I want to get back to the core of that. I want to move away from the political side that is the education system. And we're really at the moment sitting in that really happy medium place where we're able to attract people that have had the experience and want to work with kids, and they want to be working in that really fun environment that we obviously operate in. And that in itself has probably been probably somewhat of a reflection of COVID. I think that education landscape has allowed us to find the right people. But then strategically, we've made some decisions around also making sure that, we approach local universities and give third year or fourth year phys ed trained teachers an opportunity to build their capacity. They're not quite there from a training aspect. The hope for us for retention is that absolutely they come in, they love what they do, and they don't want to leave. And, I think about our staff growth in the last sort of 6 to 10 months, it's been exponential. And, that's a short period of time, but what's been great is we haven't really lost anyone, which I think is usually a pretty good sign.
Yeah, no, for sure. What would be then, I know, looking at challenges and stuff like the recurring stuff, you got a big requirement to really kind of get laser focused, like you said, when you're at this stage where you've got, especially you mentioned you've got those brands on board, but also I'm sure it's your reputation preceding you, and you're going to get more and more people approaching you. So yeah, staying focused on the core message. But what are those kind of day-to-day recurring challenges that you see in the business, and that you have to deal with every day? Maybe not that enjoyable, but they kind of come up, and you got to resolve them.
Yeah, look, I think anything, when you start to have not only a diverse group of staff, but also geographically this really long stretch, it's always, you're always going to have day-to-day operational needs. I've got Gracie O'Keefe, our community and family manager right now. I feel like she's sitting on my shoulder because she's the one that really probably bears the brunt of those operational needs day to day. That is really tricky because, as I said to you, again, going back to that growth for us, we're really mindful of the fact that it's not just about going out and trying to continue this expansion. We need to make sure the consistency is there. So, a lot of what we've done in recent times is, rather than throwing staff to the wolves, if you will, we've really tried to probably in some ways overspend on staff with the intention that they get a chance to mirror and shadow, so that they feel comfortable in the space, so that, in 3-4 months time, or whether that be an additional holiday camp that we've gone and sourced, that they're in a space where they feel comfortable to go and deliver. But look, day to day, you're always going to have staff that have sick days or whatever that looks like. And it is tricky because, we try to maintain an image that is all about quality and consistency. And so, I think we've probably at the moment really invested, particularly in overpaying, or overstaffing, if you will. But we know that, again, that's critical for our growth, long term. We know that that's important for us to build staff capacities, and that really does sit at the core of what we do, because we know that the fruits will come from that.
Yeah, definitely. I guess standardizing that delivery, making sure that high quality is always there, is going to lead into was kind of my next question. I was going to talk to you about brand building, and I know you've kind of gone through a process looking at your marketing streams and kind of centralizing that. Can you speak to that in terms of what that looked like, maybe the project there?
Yeah, look, we made a really tough decision. So going on probably what was now, probably 7 or 8 months ago now, we operated in a model, because of the geographical regions of Perth, by breaking each area up, and we had what we called area managers, and they were managing an area. When I'd come across, we started to look at what was quality and consistency. What becomes really tough, and this is the same sort of challenges with franchisee models, is maintaining that quality and consistency across the board. So we had, at that point, multiple phone numbers, because each area manager had their own phone number. We had multiple email addresses, and that became almost too hard to manage. And so we had to make a really tough decision, and that was to move away from that area manager role and streamline things and become more of a corporation model, where we had one bookings email and we had one phone number, and it allowed us to then be able to filter to the correct people, but manage it in-house. And again, align it back to that bigger vision, I suppose, strategically about what it is that we were trying to achieve. So that was probably the foundations of really where our growth has come from, quite honestly, is we had to make that really tough call. And I think that tough call was that things were going well with area managers in that space, but they weren't necessarily going to be manageable in terms of expansion for the footprint that we were wanting to achieve, because like I said to you, they naturally lead to their own flexibility and change in delivery and change of expectations, and hard to manage professional development for staff that were in those areas. So we brought it back in-house, and that's been reflective, as I said, of I suppose the quality that we've been able to deliver since, and as a result of that, been able to then go and grow and support those area managers that sit in that space.
Yeah, so it's a perfect model. It's like scaling it back to get all those foundations correct, and then you can build and scale hopefully without any restrictions till, well, I guess the next hurdle, which will be at a much larger scale. So yeah, it makes perfect sense. I just want to switch gears a little bit and talk a bit more personal questions. So in terms of how you operate as a leader, do you have anything that you kind of lean on, or any habits and stuff that you utilize every day in, day out to keep yourself at kind of best performance?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting question, because it's probably one that I think I, in some ways, battle with daily. I've moved from what has been an extremely structured environment within schools, where you're allocated a time to go to the toilet and eat and day in, day out, to a point where there's autonomy around what your day looks like. So for me as a leader, there's some things that I do try and set, which is it can even be as simple as getting up and getting dressed and putting on a uniform and putting on a name badge and setting the tone for the day. For me, what underpins everything that I do is that you're only ever as good as the people that either surround you or are on ground. And so everything we do is about trying to support those around us. And for me, I'm very lucky to have, again, I mentioned her name, Gracie O'Keefe, our community and families manager, trying to ensure that she's supported, the best that she can be to be able to deliver. But look, individually, I think it's important to try and build in breaks. It's something that I haven't probably quite gotten to in recent times. It's interesting. I was listening to another podcast, and the concept was, rather than build to-do lists, build calendar blocks. And I think it's a really good suggestion. And the calendar blocks was just following it following it calendar item by calendar item, and within that calendar item was setting a mindful movement break to go out and maybe catch some fresh air for 10-15 minutes. And I think that's really important. And I think as we grow, and it's hard because, like I said, going back to the opportunities that are coming at every rate, you want to work, but it's about also making sure that you maintain that well-being balance, and that you're in the best place to lead. And for me, that is about making sure that, as I said, you try and set parameters around start terms and finish times for all staff for me. And as I said, we're really fortunate to have the staff that we've got. And for me, the retention of those staff is absolutely critical to what we do moving forward. And that's a space and a journey that I'm on as a leader, is about, learning what it is that each of those staff members need to feel valued, but also to feel supported. So, I hope that answers your question.
No, it definitely does. And the last question we always ask everyone is a bit of a reflective one. So if it's kind of going back and looking at yourself when you started that journey, maybe when you left school, and if you could go back and give yourself just one little piece of advice, what would that be?
I think one thing that I've always been good at, and one that is maybe just naturally me as a person, but is one that I would give to anyone, and I'd certainly give back to myself, back to that time, is, although you might not see the fruits of going out and connecting with people, they do come to fruition along the journey. It's amazing how many connections that I've made, whether that be through playing sport, through going and spending evenings at board meetings that maybe didn't have much relevance to my role at the time, to putting your hand up to go and do something that might be a little bit of left field. I am amazed day in, day out at how much of an impact that has, particularly I think in Perth. We've got a relatively small population. We've got 2.5 million people here, and you're almost connected by family. Probably 1 in 3 or 4 people, but that for me continues to ring true every day. The importance of building connections, building relationships, never burning bridges, because a wise man once told me that you never know when you're going to be sitting next to the person that you meet, potentially in a workspace, and the importance that they might hold down the line. And I think they're really wise words. So that's probably what I would give to myself back then, I think, is put your hand up, put yourself out there, build relationships at every level, and make sure that you don't burn bridges, because they, like I said, they will pay you back somewhere along the line.
Yeah, for sure. That's what they're saying, that your network is your net worth, right? So yeah, that definitely rings true. Mitch, I really appreciate you coming on and speaking so openly with us. And for anyone who's interested to learn more about MBA and kind of follow the journey, we'll add all those links in the description. And yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, wonderful. No, look, once again, it was a real honour, and for us, as I said to you, I've been over here in sleepy old Perth. It's a true honour to be on a podcast of the size and the work that you guys are doing. And we'd love to hear from anyone that's even seeking opportunities of a little sea change from the UK over to sunny, shiny Perth. Please reach out. We'd love to hear from you.
Perfect. Cheers, man.